Welcome to Lombardia, the final one-day classic in Season 4, a mountainous monument race, a great prelude into the Tour de France, a great send-off to the one-day classics as well, because this race is always one of the most entertaining and interesting on the calendar, because it's a one-day classic for the climbers, and there's a lot of mountains on the course. And that is evidence because Supershock Radvat has been dropped very early on. He has 100 kilometers to ride until the finish, so he's not going to figure in the race today. We had a breakaway group of 6 riders, which is already down to 4. Robo Nagasi leading them here. Jan Fong is the Vitrua 4-star rider. I'm not sure about that Castelli rider. Actually, it's Elijah Johnson, the lead-out man for Davide Lagana. So these riders are not very good climbers at all. Just having an adventure in the breakaway in Lombardia. But once the peloton really starts racing, these guys get dropped and finish a long way behind. On the Valico di Valcava climb, 10.7 kilometers averaging 8%, so it's actually quite a tough climb. But this peloton is still very big, and they're not attacking yet. But the climbers who want to avoid a showdown sprint finish at the very end of the race need to think about when they'll make their move. There's plenty of climbs to do so, but the final mountain tops out over 20 kilometers from the finish. So riders like Jean-Marie Caillou and even Luis Sancho might need to plan ahead here, because nobody wants to take a rider like Ibai Leida to the finish line. You've seen what he can do in the sprints, same with Mario Mazziota, and those are outside contenders if the attacks come too late in the race. Looking at the top of the climb now, you see the early breakaway riders starting to get dropped, and there's the main field being led along by the Hackett team. Hackett also have Manuel Navarro, that great Spanish climber. He's another candidate to win the race, and I think he'll try and attack from further out, and we'll see if Mario Mazziota can wait in reserve and keep up with the others, because if things come back together, Mazziota could certainly win at the very end. So some intrigue in Lombardia, a race that can finish in many different ways, and still a long ways to go. Our next climb is the Forcella di Verbena, which is probably the easiest mountain that we'll go over in this finale of the race. One landmark we've already gone past in Lombardia. It was very early in the course, but it was the climb of the Madonna del Ghisallo, a very famous landmark in the sport of cycling. There's a chapel on top of the mountain for the patron saint of cycling, and there's relics for past cyclists as well. So a very important monument to the sport, and I'm sure that'll be there for a very long time. Back at the front of the race here with Robo Nagasi, who's leading the way down the descent. Elijah Johnson not helping him, just sitting in the wheels. These two just enjoying a nice autumn ride in the mountains surrounding Lake Como in the north of Italy, because they don't have any chance of winning this race. But it's beautiful terrain, certainly a wonderful place to visit, especially this time of year. My favorite soccer club, also located in this part of the world. Actually, it's located in the finishing town of Bergamo, and that is Atalanta BC. They compete in the top level of Italian football. They're not one of the big clubs, but they're one with a very passionate fan base. Perhaps a few of them will be watching the bike race today. Gonzalo Galvez here just making his way down the descent. And here comes the peloton, driven along by Glenn Martins. And I'm curious when the real climbing domestiques and the attackers will start making their big moves. That previous climb of the Valcava was quite hard, but nothing really happened there. Still 80 riders still in this group. AlphaTauri want to start making things a bit harder. They know that Levi Kennedy is not going to be around later in the race. They're going to use him now, try and set a hard tempo at the base of this climb. The Forcello di Verbeno is 5.8 kilometers, averaging 5.6%. Not particularly hard, but when you add a lot of these climbs together, it will start to hurt. Faunor now doing the pacemaking. AlphaTauri, Sismic, even Natalia also showing interest in doing some controlling of the race. And no sign of these Kyoto riders. So they're the team that's still dominating in the team standings. They still lead by around 1,000 points over AlphaTauri, and that's despite the gains that AlphaTauri made in the previous race. In the Copa del Emilia, they won with Luis Sancho, Yevgeny Balashkov was 3rd, and Jeff Cooper was 10th. So that race went about as well as it possibly could have for AlphaTauri, but still a long way down. But remember that this is a monument race, which means there's 70% bonus for points, 850 points for the winner instead of 500 for most classics. And if they were to win with Luis Sancho once again, that would make things very interesting going into the Tour de France. The breakaway group has gotten smaller. I think that's Jan Feng who's been dropped. This peloton's still mostly intact. We're approaching the top of the climb here. So things not really breaking apart. The team's content to just sit in reserve. They know the next 2 climbs are very steep, much harder than the one we just did. The Sant Antonio Abandona, the steepest climb on the course, I think it averages around a 9%. So that will be a good launch pad for an attack, but it's still a long way from the finish. 64 kilometers to ride for these two. Peloton just a bit further behind. Johnson will start the Abandona in first position. And there's the stats of the climb at the top of the screen, 6.2 kilometers, averaging 9.2%. Some very steep sections near the top of the climb. This peloton's still very large. There's still a sprinter leading them with Sofiane Germouni. Well, we talked about not getting attacks, and then Ugo Zorzi has decided to change that just now. An attack from the peloton. He's already caught up to Jan Feng. He's bridging across to the leaders where he has a teammate in Elijah Johnson. Ugo Zorzi might be the most disappointing rider from this season. I think he scored less than 300 points in all the races we've had so far. And for a rider who is so highly touted in the preseason, it's really hard to fathom how unproductive he's been in terms of the points. But now he's trying something crazy in Lombardia, and I have to say I'm a big fan of this move. If it works out, the devil of Cagliari will atone for all of his lack of results. So this is the move that Castelli needed to try. Something to regain the confidence of Ugo Zorzi as we go into the Tour de France. Because we should not count him out in that race. If he gets in some breakaways, he's the type of rider who can do a lot in some of these medium mountain stages. But that's still after Lombardia. In this race, Valno are still controlling the race. Lots of riders here at the peloton. It seems they're not too concerned about Ugo Zorzi. Zorzi has a lead of 1 minute and 40 seconds, and it continues to go out. It's approaching 2 minutes now. And with the way the profile looks, it's very up and down. Not a lot of flat road to organize the chase until we go over the final climb. So if Zorzi gets a big gap, he'll have a chance. Why not survive by himself, but we'll see if other attacks come up and try and join him. He's 2.5 minutes ahead. He's gone over the Abandona. He will descend, and then he'll start the Miragolo San Salvatore, which is not quite as hard as this climb, but it's still pretty steep. And we'll see what kind of form he has, because it's one thing to open up a gap like this on a single climb, but when you're riding alone by yourself and you're putting in so much effort, he might tire over the next climb. But if he can maintain his advantage, he'll give himself a chance in Lombardia. Zorzi is certainly sparing nothing on this descent. He's taken it quite hard actually. He knows he needs to continue to push out this gap while the peloton is not really concerned with chasing him down. So once they get serious, it's going to be hard for him to stay away for a very long time. He's on to the climb now, the San Salvatore, 8.8 kilometers, average of 7% gradient. And for those who don't know how the percent gradient works, a little lesson here. So it has to do with the angle of the climb. It's in the incline of the road compared to a flat plane. So if a road inclines at a 45-degree angle, that would be a 100% gradient. It has to do with a slope of 1/1. Basically, you take the percent gradient, and then you have it, and that is the degree that the road is rising. But this is customary when you are grading terrain or grading roads or talking about it in the cycling terms. So the peloton are onto some steep gradients now, around 8% at this point in the climb. It's still 2 minutes 40 seconds ahead of Giorgio, so his advantage is about the same as it was over the top of the previous climb. And he's already close to halfway up this one. The peloton still has 51 riders. There's only one significant climb after this one, and it's not nearly as hard as the San Salvatore or the Abbandona. So the climbers are going to attack. They need to do it very soon. They're actually starting to run out of mountains here. And this is playing right into the hands of the Kyoto team, and even Hackett, because Leida and Matsuoda are both in that peloton. And if Jerome Moikin, who's not a tremendous high mountain climber, if he's going to be on the front here for a long time, it'll make things easier for Kyoto and Hackett. See Kyoto not really concerned at all about the state of the race. Got a lot of riders still here, just serving themselves at the back. Udebaya comes to the front as the gap to Giorgio balloons to 3 minutes. She's also not known as a high mountain specialist despite her win in the Giro d'Italia. That was from a breakaway stage, not against the big climbers like Luis Sancho. Giorgio approaching the top of the mountain, under 40 kilometers to ride now. And with a 3 minutes advantage, things getting interesting, although he's looking tired, but his advantage is still healthy and he'll have a long descent after the next climb. But the mountain of Salvino will decide if Giorgio will have any chance to win this race. Because if he's totally exhausted, his advantage could get totally wiped out. And we're getting attacks. It's Jeff Cooper and Kelvin Moore jumping clear. So they've had enough sitting around in the peloton, and that main field has been reduced. Just 27 riders. A few attackers. Navarro and Ling Shen also gave it a try. But here's Cooper and Kelvin Moore. The gap is 36 seconds, so they've got a little bit of daylight. And these are two fairly strong riders. They can work together. And they've gained back a little bit on Giorgio. He's 2 minutes 20 seconds ahead of these two. And Giorgio has started the Salvino climb. 6.8 kilometers, 5.4% grade. It is not steep, but we've gone over so many mountains that might hurt anyway. Moore is attacking Jeff Cooper. He knows this race could get chaotic in the final kilometers. And at this point, it's probably better to just ride your own tempo and not carry the dead weight of another rider. Kyoto have finally come to the front of the main field. I think they're now starting to get concerned about the moves because Giorgio is still in front, and two good climbers have attacked in Jeff Cooper and Kelvin Moore. Moore has closed down the gap on Giorgio. It's under 1 minute 30 seconds now. But Giorgio's still maintaining a good rhythm. He doesn't have the energy to lift his pace too much. He's just trying to maintain his advantage. If he can still be in front over the top of this climb, he'll have a long descent to try and recuperate. And if Kelvin Moore can join him, they could end up working together. The field continuing to splinter apart. Euskotel Euskadi now setting the tempo, but Luis Sancho has attacked. This is the move he needed to make. The question is now if this attack is too late. He's waited till the top of the Salvino climb. He's blown past his teammate Jeff Cooper. And now he's on the chase to try and reach Moore and Giorgio. Giorgio has been caught and passed by Kelvin Moore. And Sancho's almost up there, so he's made a really vicious acceleration at top of this climb. And look what's unfolding behind. This race is blown to pieces. So the Salvino climb, which is not very steep, it has broken the spirits of the main field. They've broken into so many groups. And there's 23 kilometers to ride. So we'll see if things come back together on the descent. Rudiger is still attacking. He's trying to get up to Kelvin Moore. So I think Giorgio and Luis Sancho will reach Kelvin Moore, and they have. They lead by over 20 seconds ahead of Rico Rudiger, 44 seconds ahead of a group with Carlos Nello, Zheng Ling Shen, Jeff Cooper, and Hippolyte Toutain, and a minute 20 over the group with Caillou and Navarro. very dynamic race situation. And Sancho, he's not going to let this group dawdle downhill. He's going to keep the pace high. He knows this might be my best chance to win this race. I have to work with these two and maintain an advantage. I did not see Eli Lida in these front three groups, and that is a good sign for AlphaTauri. Hippolyte Touton is not a very good sprinter, very explosive. He's had a good race to actually still be with these top climbers. And where is Yevgeny Volashkov? He might be in that third chase group there, the one driven by Nsenkamana. So see if Volashkov can get back to the second chase group for AlphaTauri. But look at this drag race across the flat road. We have one more little hill, the Bergamo Alta. It's actually a lightly cobbled climb, which will make things a lot tougher. And Ling Shin and Touton, Nello, and Cooper, they're having trouble deciding who's going to pull for the turns, and that's giving an opportunity to this front group of four. So Rudiger has reached the Sancho group. They lead by 50 seconds ahead of the chasers, and Sancho is attacking on the flat road. A very shrewd move. He wants no hesitation. He just wants to ride his own pace and go all the way to the finish, because the gaps are still close enough for things to come together. 7Ks to go now. Sancho turns right. More counter-attacking to try and reach him, but Sancho is approaching the Bergamo Alta, 1 kilometer away. And what's the situation with Zorzi and Rudiger? Zorzi is chasing. Remember, he attacked so far away from the finish, and he's still in with a chance for a great result. Sancho started the climb more in his wheel. It's a very short climb to Bergamo Alta, just 1.4 kilometers. And Sancho's attacking again, right when Rudiger gets back, but Sancho's going to leave him behind. Kelvin Moore just doesn't have the power to stay in his wheel, and Sancho is clear over the top of the final climb. He'll go downhill, 3Ks to go, and then turn left into the finish. And this is quite an astonishing ride by Luis Sancho, attacking on the flat road. He's going to win a second race in succession, and this could be the start of a magnificent come-from-behind charge by AlphaTauri. Sancho going back-to-back in the Italian classics. Words can't describe what he's done the last two races. It is simply astonishing. The early attacker, Ugo Zorzi, a very well-deserved second place as he gets past Kelvin Moore at the end, and Moore gets a wonderful result in third to round out the podium. The attackers being rewarded as they should in Il Lombardia. And you see these mini chase groups will trickle in bit by bit. This one was 2 minutes back, the rest much further behind. And points down to the top 30, so the points scored by these riders and around the middle of the pack here will still matter. Here comes Matsuyoda. I think that's Udebaya and Lucci for Italia, excuse me. So picking up some minor placings there. But the real superstar of the day is Luis Sancho, because he's come alive in ways we never could have expected in the final two races. Absolutely outstanding in the Coppa dell'Emilia and the Il Lombardia, doing so much attacking, truly dominant performance. He has won this race by attacking on the flat road, then attacking again on the Bergamo Alta. He wins by 18 seconds ahead of Ugo Zorzi of Castelli, and that is Zorzi's best result of this season. Kelvin Moore was third in the same time as Zorzi, and Rico Rudiger fourth for Euskottel Euskadi. He rode a fantastic race, finished 55 seconds behind Sancho. Hippolyte Touton was fifth in 1 minute 16 seconds with Jean-Marie Caillou in the same time. And that main chase group was led by Chongling Shin of Valnor in 7th place, 1 minute 44 seconds back, with Manuel Navarro, Yevgeny Volashkov, and Carlos Nello finishing the top 10. Kyoto have salvaged the race with Touton, who finished in 5th place, but Ibai Lida only managed 20th. So once again, AlphaTauri gaining big points. And I think they've gained back even more than they did in the Coppa dell'Emilia, so things are getting interesting. So we'll stop with the suspense and show the updated team standings. This is how the competition looks ahead of the Tour de France. From here on out, all that matters is that one event on French roads. Here are the team standings. Kyoto still the leaders, 11,799 points. But look what AlphaTauri has done. They were 1,500 points behind after the Benelux Tour. They are now just 250 points behind. That lead for Kyoto has completely evaporated. Luis Sancho taking over in the final classics of the VeloTour. And although Kyoto should be favored in the Tour de France, AlphaTauri still have a chance. Valnor barely holding on to third place, just 100 points ahead of Euskaltel Euskadi. It seems that margin is closing with every single race, and they will battle for the spot on the podium in the Tour de France. Hackett's still unfit as they've been for most of the season, but now Talia catching up to Sismic, a team that spent some time in 10th place this season. They have been charging up in recent classics. They got that win from Udebaya, good result from Lucci last time, and now Kelvin Moore was 3rd place. So they're 3 points out of 6th. That's a big improvement from earlier in the season. The bottom of the leaderboard pretty much unchanged. Those teams don't have very good climbers, although Castelli not totally out of touch from Vichora Forrestal now, and Castelli did quite well in the Giro, so they would have a chance to climb out of the cellar. So those are the team storylines heading into the Tour de France. We'll also show the updated individual standings, because unbelievably, they have a new leader for the highest scoring rider this season. And that is Luis Sancho of AlphaTauri, who has 3,280 points. And what is completely astonishing about Sancho's season, he has only scored points in 5 of the 14 VeloTour events, and he's averaging over 600 points each time he scores. That is simply an unbelievable record. He's scoring better than winning a normal classic in every race he scores. That's a statistic that's hard to wrap your head around, and that's given him the lead in the individual standings. His teammate Balashkov is now 3rd. So AlphaTauri are making a real comeback, and it's going to be a showdown in the Tour de France for sure. Harold Skavgo has moved up in recent races. He's now the 7th highest scorer for Jupiler, putting in a great season. Many of the usual suspects still up there as well. Kelvin Moore entering the top 15. Good sign as we enter the final race of the season. The drama has intensified following Lombardia. The season is not over. I wonder if Ali is concerned at all that Dzak's team is on the charge, and they're due for a massive showdown in the Tour de France. Unfortunately for AlphaTauri, they have 4 big problems in the Tour de France. Those are the 4 time trial stages, but there's also many, many hard mountains. So with that, we'll pick it up at the Tour de France. That's the next time you'll see us on the broadcast. That will be the final race of Season 4. Very much looking forward to that. As always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.